Hey guys, it's Jane. It's Friday and I'm back for a Friday Reads. I've read a bit this week despite the fact that I've had a lot on, and I'm going to try and tell you all about it quickly. I finished 2 novels, a novella and a short story. I'm going to save the novella till last and run through the others first. Firstly, the short story. I read Travelling Companion by Ian Rankin, which is a story in the Death Sentences series, which is a series of crime short stories written by different authors, all of which are hooked around a famous book. Travelling Companion is set in the 60s, and it's about a Scottish university graduate who's spending the summer before he goes back to do a PhD on Robert Louis Stevenson, is spending the summer working in Paris at Shakespeare and Company, the famous English language bookshop. While he is there, he gets introduced through his work to a book collector who claims to have access to two very important unpublished Robert Louis Stevenson manuscripts, one of which is an early version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The story basically takes off from there. It was a little bit creepy, not 100% my cup of tea, but having said that, very well done. Ian Rankin is one of my favourite crime authors. Now, the first novel that I read was an Australian YA fantasy. It's called Valentine by Jodi McAlister. Valentine is set in a mid-sized Australian town a few hours out of Sydney. It mainly concerns a group of 4 teenagers who all happen to have been born in the same local hospital on the same day 17 years ago on Valentine's Day. The story opens at a party where most of this group of 4 teens and many other teenagers are. The party kind of breaks up after some sort of bizarro things go on, and then a couple of days later it turns out that one of the people who had been at the party, one of these 4 teenagers, is missing, and after a search, parts of her body turn up, which is very, very gruesome, and shatters everybody in the town. But that is not the end. That is just the beginning of the story. It turns out that this is a fairy tale in the pre-Disney kind of fairy tale world, which means less pink and silver sparkly wings and more nightmare apparitions. One of the 4 teenagers born on that fateful night is actually a changeling, a fairy child who has been swapped for a human child. And now, 17 years later, fairy has come calling. A couple of different factions of fairy have come calling, some of which just want the child to come back, the others who do not wish the child well at all. And the problem is that it's unclear which of the teenagers is the fairy child. So that is kind of the outline of what's going on in the story. Add in a sprinkling of kind of Australiana, slice of life, and that will get you pretty much close to Valentine by Jodi McAlister. It's got a little bit too much teenage, romance angst for me to really enjoy it. Plus, again, there's a bit more horror element of this than is really to my taste, but there's a really satisfying end to this story, so it's not like a cliffhanger ending. I'm very happy finishing there, but it's not at all that I don't recommend the book, it's just that it's not really my thing. The second novel that I finished this week was Cold Iron by Stina Leicht. Apologies for my mispronunciation. This is an epic fantasy tale, the beginning of a series, and this is a series that I will be continuing in. In lots of ways, it opens like it is quite a standard sort of fantasy world, secondary world. It's kind of medieval-ish, but there are a few distinctives in this which really kind of set it apart. One is the fact that in this story, human beings are the other. There are humans in the story, but they are kind of the enemy race to the protagonists, and all of the protagonists belong to this kind of magic wielding, sort of elfish, I think, race. I think so, because there is a slur that they use about humans being round ears. So I have a feeling that they're kind of elves. So the fact of humans being the other is an interesting twist. Another thing that's quite distinctive in this is the magic use. Now, there's a million magic systems in the world. The distinctive thing about this is the understanding that magic is a two-edged sword. One of our point of view characters, Nels, is in his mind a defective, which is what people of this elvish race call those without magic. He isn't actually without magic, but he's without much magic, and he's without the most important, socially important kind of magic. And because we see a lot of it from his point of view, we see how using magic, overusing magic, has actually left this society open to attack by the non-magical humans, because they haven't developed all these other technologies and other things that they could have done if they hadn't had the magic. We also see a number of cases where magic is being abused, where people abuse their magical powers to do nasty things. And so this idea of magic as being a bit of a poison chalice is quite a distinctive thing, which you often don't see in fantasy stories. A third distinctive is that the society, the main society that the story is told about, has a very special relationship with violence. In this world, anybody who takes part in violence, kills someone or sheds blood, is automatically puts themselves outside of the pale of normal society. That's not just murder, like just defending yourself. In any circumstance, if you shed blood, then you are created yourself into a soldier. And soldiers, they are set apart from the rest of the population. They have certain tasks in the society. There is different caste, and they are not allowed to kind of wield power outside of the military. This is all kind of comes to the fore because Nels, who's one of our main characters, starts out the book as the crown prince. He's the son of the king, and at about 16 years of age, he is out riding when he is attacked, and his entourage are taken by surprise and killed. He defends himself despite tradition by picking up a sword and fighting off his attackers, and despite the fact that he saves his life and the life of some other civilians that are with him, it means that he is no longer have any access to the crown. His twin sister is automatically created the new heir, and he is basically thrown out of the family to become a soldier. So the strange relationship they have with violence is another really interesting distinctive of this book. Apart from Nels, his twin sister is a really interesting character, and also there's Nels's love interest, who is a healer and quite an important person. She's a third really important character. I really enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to getting to the second volume of this story. However, the most exciting read that I had this week is by far was All Systems Red by Martha Wells. This is a novella. It's not incredibly long, but it's a beautifully well-formed story. It follows Murderbot, which is the name that the security unit who is the central narrator of the story, the point of view character, gives itself. Murderbot works for a planetary exploration concern, is is kind of halfway between a bodyguard and a bond company stooge for these different prospecting companies that come to look at different parts of the planet. Security units are robots. They're not supposed to be autonomous. They have organic elements, but Murderbot has actually hacked her own governance unit, and so she is autonomous. And as the story progresses, we find out how and why she has done this. Now, I keep saying she because for some reason in my head I keep thinking of her as she, but the security units are without sex and the story doesn't assign a gender. So I'm sorry I keep slipping. I'm trying to do better. While out on what initially seems to be quite a routine trip with a group of about 6 prospecting explorers, things start going strangely wrong, and quickly becomes apparent that somebody is wishing them ill. The story is about finding out what's going on with that and getting away successfully from this trap. And it's also the story of Murderbot being outed as an autonomous unit. The character of Murderbot is the real strength of this story, and their character arc in this novella is really quite extraordinary. It's now been announced that there are 3 more novellas following Murderbot to be released next year, 2018, so I'm really looking forward to that. If you are a lover of science fiction and you haven't picked this one up, I strongly encourage you to go and have a look at All Systems Red. Okay, so that's all of the books that I've finished this week. I've started 2 different books since I finished these, which is not especially usual for me, but it's what's happened today. I started The History of Rock and Roll in 10 Songs by Greil, and I've also started Master of the 5 Magics by Lyndon. I haven't got very far in either of those. I'm not sure if I'm going to stick with one or try and read both or what's going on. That's what I'm up to this Friday. I'd love to hear what you guys are reading. I'd love to hear if any of you have read any of these books that I've talked about, what you think. I hope you're all well, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!